Have you ever heard of a queen who stood alone against an empire? In the 1600s, while European powers were claiming lands and enslaving people across Africa, one woman dared to stand in their way. Her name was Queen Nzinga of Ndongo and Matamba, and her story is one of courage, resilience, and clever diplomacy. Nzinga was born into the royal family of Ndongo, a kingdom located in present-day Angola. Her father was a king, a proud and powerful leader who resisted the growing Portuguese influence in the region. From a young age, Nzinga watched her father navigate the dangerous waters of diplomacy, balancing relationships with European traders, other African kingdoms, and his own people. She learned early on that a ruler had to be both strong and wise to protect their people. As a child, Nzinga was intelligent, observant, and brave. Unlike many girls of her time, she was trained in politics, military strategy, and diplomacy. Her father saw her potential and trusted her with responsibilities that would prepare her for the future. Little did he know she would one day need all of these skills to face the greatest threat their people had ever known. By the time Nzinga was a young woman, the Portuguese had become a powerful force in Central Africa. They were not just interested in trade, they wanted control of the land, the resources, and the people. They had already established colonies along the coast, and now they wanted to expand their influence inland. The people of Ndongo were seen as valuable assets, not just because of their fertile land, but because the Portuguese were deeply involved in the transatlantic slave trade. They wanted to enslave the people of Ndongo and sell them to European buyers. When Nzinga's father died, her brother Ngola Mbandi took the throne. Ngola was a proud leader, but he struggled under the pressure of the Portuguese. They attacked villages, enslaved people, and demanded tribute. Ngola was left with few choices. His people were suffering, and he feared the destruction of their kingdom. Desperate for a solution, Ngola sent his sister Nzinga to negotiate with the Portuguese. This was not a job for just anyone. It required a person of exceptional intelligence and courage. Nzinga understood the stakes. If she failed, her people would be doomed to slavery. But Nzinga was determined to win. Nzinga arrived at the Portuguese governor's court, and immediately the disrespect was clear. In a calculated insult, the Portuguese had prepared a luxurious chair for their governor, but offered Nzinga nothing more than a mat on the floor. To sit on the floor in front of the governor would show submission, a symbol of inferiority. But Nzinga would not allow herself to be humiliated. Without hesitation, she turned to one of her attendants and, with a single look, commanded him to kneel on his hands and knees. She sat on his back as though it were a throne, leveling her gaze with the governor's. Her message was clear: I am your equal, not your inferior. The governor was stunned. Nzinga had shown, in one bold move, that she could not be intimidated. This act of defiance would become legendary, symbolizing her refusal to submit to colonial power. The negotiation was difficult. The Portuguese wanted tribute, land, and slaves. Nzinga was unwilling to give in, but she understood that diplomacy sometimes required compromise. She agreed to convert to Christianity and was baptized, taking the name Ana de Sousa. This conversion was largely strategic. By aligning herself with the Portuguese religion, she gained favor and trust in their eyes. But Nzinga had no intention of becoming a puppet of the Portuguese. The Portuguese governor, impressed by Nzinga's negotiation skills, agreed to a temporary peace. But Nzinga knew that peace with the Portuguese would not last. She returned to Ndongo with a renewed determination to protect her people, and if necessary, to fight for their freedom. Nzinga's brother Ngola, however, did not share her strength. Consumed by fear and paranoia, he began to doubt his own ability to rule. In his desperation, he committed suicide, leaving the throne of Ndongo in Nzinga's hands. Nzinga was now the queen, and she vowed to defend her people against the Portuguese, no matter the cost. As queen, Nzinga proved to be a formidable leader. She knew that her kingdom could not face the Portuguese alone, so she formed alliances with neighboring tribes and kingdoms. Nzinga also made an alliance with the Dutch, who were rivals of the Portuguese in the region. She offered them trade deals and military support in exchange for weapons and resources, strengthening her forces. Nzinga transformed her kingdom into a safe haven for runaway slaves and refugees from Portuguese-controlled territories. She welcomed anyone who was willing to fight for freedom. Her army grew, filled with people who were loyal and motivated by the desire to escape oppression. For years, Nzinga led her people in a guerrilla war against the Portuguese. She knew the terrain well and used it to her advantage, striking swiftly and retreating before the Portuguese could respond. Her knowledge of the land, combined with her military tactics, made her nearly impossible to defeat. The Portuguese, frustrated and humiliated, saw their forces outsmarted by Nzinga time and again. Imagine a queen, well into her 60s, leading her soldiers into battle. Nzinga was known to dress as a warrior, and she fought alongside her troops, never asking them to do something she herself would not. Her courage inspired her people, and her enemies began to see her as a force of nature. Nzinga's resistance did not go unnoticed. For decades, she held off one of the world's most powerful empires, securing her people's freedom and protecting her land from colonization. But her legacy went beyond mere military victories. Nzinga showed that a single determined leader could inspire a people to fight against impossible odds. She used diplomacy, cunning, and sheer determination to resist colonization. Even when her forces were outnumbered, even when her resources were scarce, Nzinga found a way to defy the odds. In the end, Nzinga's story is one of resilience, courage, and a refusal to accept defeat. She fought the Portuguese until her final days, never surrendering her land or her people to colonial rule. Though the Portuguese eventually expanded their influence in the region, Nzinga's defiance left a lasting impact. Her life and legacy inspired future generations to continue the struggle for freedom and autonomy. So what can we learn from Queen Nzinga? Nzinga's story teaches us that true power doesn't come from strength alone. It comes from resilience, intelligence, and an unwavering belief in one's right to freedom. She refused to be conquered, and in doing so, she showed the world that African leaders could stand as equals to the empires of Europe. Queen Nzinga's story is not just a historical account. It is a symbol of African resistance against oppression. Her life reminds us that sometimes a single person's courage and vision can change the course of history.